Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Life Unscripted. Today's episode is not just about medals, it's about grit, reinvention, and to understand what we human beings are actually capable of. Today, I have with me a woman who was known as the fastest girl in India. We are going to talk about her journey and we are going to see and learn how discipline and consistency and doing things one thing at a time and growing matters most, and how you can reinvent yourself when the time comes. Thank you so much, Aisha, for joining us. Thank you so much for finding time to be on the podcast. And thank you so much for enlightening us today in this beautiful conversation that we are going to have.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation ahead. I think we have so many things in common. I think our mindset, just chatting outside, I figured that you have a very straightforward approach and very honest approach to life. So I think this will be a really interesting conversation.
Thank you for the kind words. So, Aisha, let me start by just asking that, running in India, like there are not many people who do that. Like in our books and when we grow up, we always hear about PT Usha, but we never saw athletics per se to flourish a lot in India. Recent times, probably, with the javelin, Neeraj Chopra and all, but it was never a hot cake like cricket
Yeah.
per se.
Yeah.
So, when did you actually start running, and what motivated you to go into fitness and running and athletics and all these things?
Well, I started running at a very young age. I was about 11 years old when I ran my first race at school. Also, it was a very sudden inclusion of me being at the sports day because I had just come back from a boarding school and I had gotten my entry into the school, and the principal said, asked my dad, would Aisha run the sports day? And she was like, yeah, she'll run sports day. Just tell us what she has to do and she'll do it. So it was one of my first races. I think it was a 100-meter race, and we just my father said, you have to stand in this lane and you have to run very fast. That's all you have to do. You have to run very fast, and that's all I would do. They said, on your marks, get set, go, and the next thing you know is you have to just burst out. And I actually didn't know where the finish line was, so I kept running, and I reached the middle of the race, and I stopped, and I looked behind, and the girls were still running. And everybody from my house, I was in a red house, everybody from my house was standing up and saying, oh, run to the finish line, run to the finish line. And that's when I actually realized that I was fast. And I think then there was no turning back from there. Many, many years of racing, many, many years of competing. And I think through those initial years of winning also, my father had this wonderful dream of me becoming an Olympian. I think he saw it, I think he believed in it, and then that eventually became a goal that we kind of worked towards.
So that first day, did you actually win it?
The first,
The first race when you stopped in the middle and
I
you said,
actually did win it, like with a mile. I would say with a long distance, I won it. It was quite a thrill. Some of those memories are so fresh from those races. Even the first national gold medal that I won at the age of 15, we have actually no memory or photograph of that race, as in no physical memory of it, but the memory that's here is still very, very strong. I remember opening my arms out like Usain Bolt and finishing the race, in the 200 meters, and it was a very close cutting race with a girl from Karnataka. So I'll never forget those moments of my father being, he was happy but also like very angry because he thought that the girl would overtake me if I had not tried any of those fancy stunts. But those moments always stay in your head because we were not so influenced by gadgets, or we were not so obsessed that every race had to be shot or every photograph had to be clicked. So I think those memories really kind of keep that passion alive. It keeps that fire alive.
so did you at any, like you started when you were quite young, so and you basically you had no knowledge that what is it about?
Yeah, I didn't. It was a very, I would say, a very one tracked mind kind
Yeah.
of what should I say, sport that I was doing. Of course, I was fast and I enjoyed winning. I loved winning, actually. Enjoyed is a really small word. I loved winning. It was a high, like a runner's high
Hmm.
is that. And we just did it. It was also very mechanical. While there was a very good coach, I had Savio sir as my coach back then, and he taught us a lot. I think he gave us that joy of running, and I can never take that away from him. While my father was very dedicated towards the goal that we had set, but Savio sir really kind of helped push that joy in a very positive way. So I think it was, uh, yeah, it was quite a nice journey. I don't see any part of that journey that I would even want to change today.
So now when we talk about the journey, like you just mentioned your coach, like when you start running, okay, you understood that this is something you enjoy and you want. So I think you want that. That's it.
Yeah,
Like
you
this is
want to
something.
win.
This is something I would like to do again.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
now when a coach enters, we always see in the movies and read about it that the first thing that the coach does is jhapo you properly so that
Yeah.
you do not get over your head.
Well, I've had some of those coaches,
So
but I think
can you
Savio
share
sir
the
was.
first instance like that happened that and you are like, yeah, I just finished it, I won from a mile, and now this guy is giving me crap.
No, so in fact, in those years, I didn't have a coach.
Uh,
But Savio sir had spotted me at one of my sports days at school. He had come as a chief guest. And I think he saw me doing long jump and he saw me run the relay. And this was in the seventh grade when he had come as a chief guest. And after he saw my run, when I got the prize, got the fastest girl championship, he came to us and he said, Aisha's really good at running. Why don't you bring her to my class for training? And I was pretty poor in academics. I don't think I was a great student when it came to sitting in four walls or even having a book in front of me. And it was an opportunity that literally knocked on our door that said that this is what is meant for her, this is what she's meant to do. And my father took it. My mother was slightly against it at the start because academically, if I was not doing well, adding a sport to my life would just mean that I would not be able to study enough or go for tuitions, etc. So that was a bit of a conflict, I remember, at home. But then I think my dad was super persistent that Aisha does this. And within, I think, not even a few months, within a few days, we were at his at the ground at Priyadarshini Park, and training had begun. And yeah, like, I don't just think we never turned around from there. It
so
was only upward. Savio sir has never been, coming to your question, sorry, I got so lost in
no,
that.
no,
Coming
come
to your
on.
question, Savio sir was never that guy who would like uh, uh, raise his voice on us or even shout at us. I mean, yeah, he was an angry young man when he wanted to be, but you knew that he wanted to see you do better. He was always one of those coaches who believed in you. He was not the guy who would demean you. He was not the kind of person who would say ill even if you lost a race. He would say, koi baat nahi yaar, haar gaye to agli baar jeetoge. And so what, even if you don't win, the fact is that you enjoy running. So that joy which was instilled for track and field, really, I owe it to Savio sir.
Training comes with a set of discipline that you need to follow. So can you take me through like in your initial the first phase of your coaching when you started training with somebody, you would have to change your lifestyle a bit because he would want it to be in a certain way so as
Yeah.
to get the peak performance out.
Yeah.
So how did you take that shift? Was it fun for you or was it just like it was just a process and you just went ahead with it?
Yeah, it was a process which was so seamless because I was pretty much in my last 2 years of school. The ninth and 10th grade were the most difficult for
Mm.
me. And I remember, I think my principal was very worried that I would be the first person who would fail from my school because I was really bad at studying. And she was also very encouraging towards my sports. And that I can't take away, that the school really supported me. And the process of school and tuitions and training and everything was very seamless because I had a very good set of parents who just never gave up on me. They never said neither this nor that. Eventually, I think my mother also saw that I was winning medals, and this was bringing some kind of glory to the family and laurels to the school. So of course she was very supportive, but mom's way of supporting was slightly different than dad's. And my dad was fully in it.
Yeah.
um, but no, the process was super seamless. I would finish school at 3:30. I would go to Worli for tuitions. I would be picked up by dad at about 6:45ish, and Savio sir was very kind. I would be the last person to stay. He would wait with me for training because I was the last person who would reach there at even 7:15, and be able to, he would give me that one-on-one coaching, especially in the 10th grade. But on the days I didn't have tuition, I was obviously training with the group. So it was school, home, and then training. But on the days I had those two tuitions, which were really important because it was economics, which was horrifying for me. There was commercial studies, which was even more horrifying. Till date, I don't know what I was doing with both those subjects because I just had to mug it and write it down for the exams, but I don't think any of those play any role in my life today,
Hmm.
but they had to be done. And it was really my father who kind of took care of taking me from one place to another, while my mother took care of me having the right food at the right time. Also, food back then was super basic. We didn't know
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah,
We didn't know
definitely.
anything beyond matlab sandwiches khao, egg sandwich khao, chutney sandwich khao, ham sandwich khao, chicken sandwich khao. That used to be our meals,
Yeah.
not as fancy as it is today. No supplements really at that time. No real understanding of what is a pre-workout. No protein powders, and I think we just did fine. We did fine. We did great.
Just like that Milkha Singh wala
Yeah,
movie, that
yeah.
after you run, you get a
दूध दूध पी लो,
दूध पी लो,
एग्जैक्टली. दौड़ने के पहले भी दूध पी लो, दौड़ने के
दौड़ने के
बाद भी
बाद भी
दूध
पी
पी
लो.
लो.
Yeah.
So it's while I say that sport has come very far in India, and sport has is going to greater lengths. I see we are progressing really well. Also, people are forgetting the basics of it, and I wish we
Hmm.
could have that again.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
while it's great to be influenced by the West, let's not forget that India has what it takes to be a champion as well.
Yeah, that is actually interesting.
Yeah,
Now, when you were termed as the fastest girl in India, I mean, can you take us back to that race?
that
Because
race. Yeah, that,
usually that marquee moments are one of those that shines a lot. And if you
yeah.
can take me, what happened to you, or what switched in your mind that when you have achieved that at that particular moment?
So that race was in Bangalore, Kantira Stadium. It was 2001. It was my first nationals. I was very oddly also selected for that nationals. I remember in the selection, ICSE selection trials in India, only one girl would go for the nationals, and I was not the one who had qualified. There was a girl named Sneha Oak who had qualified, and unfortunately, she had fractured her ankle.
Oh my
So
God.
because she couldn't go, I was selected. I had become second to her in the race in Mumbai, and that's how I got selected to go for the race. And it was, everybody in the family, even extended family, friends, were thrilled that Aisha, who. So I had a lot of illnesses when I was young. So I had a very tough childhood, and for the family to see that this person is now going to be representing Maharashtra state was a big deal. So I got, at that time, my uncle gifted me this Nike bodysuit. Another uncle gifted me a pair of Nike shoes. Somebody gifted me a Nike headband, wristband. So I was standing like Marion Jones on this track with all Nike. Okay, so सबको लग रहा था कि कौन
Brand
है,
ambassador.
हाँ ये कौन है जो कहाँ से आई है ये लड़की. And at that time also, I have tanned over the years, but at that time I was very fair. I was extremely fair, so I would look like a foreigner on the track, and it was very intimidating for a lot of other girls because there have been times where I've also been asked for my passport, at nationals.
In India.
That's a whole different nationals I had gone for. They had stopped me in the middle of the
Hmm.
race and asked for my passport, like when we were warming up.
Hmm.
But here in Bangalore it was different. So of course there was a lot of chit chat happening. Coaches were discussing kaun hai, kahan se aayi hai. I was seen on the circuit for the first time, and I was just a no nonsense athlete when I was on the track. Like, you can't BS me. If I may say it out straight, I am here to win, and I'm going to win. Don't try to don't try to intimidate me. Don't try to small talk me into anything, because coaches would come and try to say things to you like, आज मेरी लड़की तुमको हराएगी, and I'd be like, हराने दो. Like, what more can I do, right? I'm not here for your girl. I'm not here for you. I'm here to win my race. And as I just said, that race was mine, and I owned it like how Usain Bolt, when he won his first gold medal in Beijing, opened his arms out, leaned his chest into the finish line. That was me at that finish line. So I knew it then that I was really meant to be an Olympian. Like, if you don't believe in it, you can't work for it. Somebody else's dream can be your dream, but you have to believe it so deeply inside of you that you work towards it. Because again, nobody's going to do the work for you. So that race really kind of changed the way I started understanding running, the way I started understanding track and field, the way I started understanding who I am and who I want to be in the future.
So something really caught my attention. You mentioned that when you are on the track, you're completely focused, no
Yeah,
BS, nothing.
yeah,
I'm here to win kind of
yeah.
situation. in today's day and age, I think at times that kind of attitude, that headstrong, "Ki, I need to do this and I need to excel at it and I need to win," is missing with us
Yeah,
because we get caught up with so much of distractions that
agreed.
focus is a commodity that is
Yeah,
getting scarce.
yeah.
If there is one thing that you would like to tell the youngsters or to everybody, like even in business, that how do you get in that moment? Okay, that might be that as soon as you enter the track, there's a switch that just turns on.
Yeah.
But how can anybody in today's day and age, get that attitude that when they have to do something and they can be that headstrong, ki, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna ace it.
I think it's very individualistic, firstly. It depends on what goals people have and how badly they want to achieve those goals. For me, I think the goal was very clear. I wanted to represent India and win an Olympic medal for India. So I don't think I look left or right. Today's generation is unfortunately really consumed by social media. And if you see more and more Indian athletes who are doing reasonably well, I won't say they're doing badly at competitions, they're doing reasonably well, but again, the influence of West has really taken over how we approach sports. Everything has become about how I show you what I do. Let me show you on the track. Let me show you in the competition. But उसके पहले ही तुम तुम्हारे पूरे साल का ट्रेनिंग डाल रहे हो. You're very consumed by what you wear and you showcase. You're very consumed by what timings I run and I have to showcase those timings on social media. So that is one major distraction that athletes or even young professionals are having, because everything has become very, how do I visually get um, how do I visually get this kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Validation, I think.
Validation,
Yeah.
exactly. How do I get that validation to feel relevant in that moment and time? हमारे टाइम पे वो था ही नहीं. Your validation was for yourself.
And
It
your
was for
victory,
your
basically,
parents.
yeah.
Yeah, your parents or your coaches, right? Our circle was very small. It was mother, father, sister, coach, and me. That's all that it was. So I didn't have to show that validation to anybody else. किसी को पता भी नहीं था कि मैंने national gold medal जीता. Till midday went out and put a post, right? But those were those small moments of glory that we got through newspapers. But then it was forgotten, right? Because time goes on, life goes on, and your sport
And
continues to
nobody's
go
gonna
on.
skim back to the old
Yeah,
one.
exactly. It was not like social media कि I can go back and see that post कि हाँ उसने कब medal जीता था. हो गया. And then we kept looking on to the next thing. Here, people will still harp on मैंने क्या किया था. हो गया वो. तुम आगे क्या करोगे उसकी बात करो.
So to
You know?
simplify, basically, like if you gotta have that mindset, you need to first have an anchor, which is your goal. That this is what I
Absolutely.
want to do.
And then you need to work towards
And
that goal.
without thinking.
I'm not saying don't use social media as a positive platform. Use it as a positive platform. But if that platform is only for you to get validated for what you're doing in the present, you're never going to work towards your goals that are in the future.
So
Right?
talk about social media. There's one thing which is very prominent with all the athletes, that if they win a medal, there's a picture of them biting that medal.
Yeah.
Was that back then, and how did it come into place? Like,
I think again somebody has observed some athlete in the West
So it
or
just
at the
looks
Olympic
cool.
level. It's cool. It's a way of saying that I earned it. This medal is mine. You know, that kind of a thing. Yeah, I don't think there's really any story behind it.
got it.
People kiss the medal. People bite the medal. It's anything. People hold
Because
their medal
this was
up.
a thing in the current Olympics,
Yeah.
that everybody was, looking at each other. If they are doing, I'll do.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
thought it might be something,
Yeah,
something related
cool.
to that. So now moving forward, like when you won the title of the fastest girl in India, did you feel the pressure to perform? Because now once you have a tag,
Yeah,
like if you're a nobody, you don't care.
that's right.
And it is like, as you mentioned, that first time you won, now
Yeah.
you always want to win.
Yeah.
So since you got that tag, did you feel any kind of pressure?
The pressure was more on myself. Nobody put that pressure on me, but there was a very subtle underlying pressure, or more than pressure, I would say an urgency that we had to get to the Olympics, because it was a goal and dream my father had, set for us and for him. And of course, you know that when you're young is the best time that you can achieve to get to a level as big as the Olympics. So yeah, there was an urgency and you had to work hard towards it, and smart. Actually, nobody told us that back then, that you have to work hard and smart. वो smartness abhi aayi once I crossed 30, But I think for the first, I would say 10, 12 professional competitive years of my life, I just trained hard, like crazy hard, listening to everybody, doing a lot of wrong things, also doing the right things. but being influenced by many people who would say ye bhi karo ye bhi acha hai wo bhi acha hai, but not really listening to yourself that what is it that you're capable of doing. Because the pressure that I had put on myself that I have to become an Olympian, I have to win an Olympic medal, was constantly building with each Olympic game trials coming. Each trial would come and I would get more stressed. If I don't make it, I have to make it. I have to make it. If I don't make it, what if I don't make it? One more 4 years gone. It's 4 years, right?
Got it.
But it's actually not 4 years. It's every day. You're working towards that Olympic dream every single day of your life. But I didn't work smart. I wasn't intelligent back then. I was a very rash athlete. I was an extremely, I don't think I was an arrogant athlete, but I was definitely all over the place. Like, हर किसी ने ये कमरे में 4 लोगों ने कुछ बोल दिया, भाई आयशा जाके वही कर देगी अब. But she's not really listening to what some of the good coaches have taught her, because she's so consumed by wanting to become an Olympian that she's willing to go to any lengths. That's who I had become. I think that was one of my life's greatest learning lesson, that you only learn when you fall flat on your face.
Definitely. And now, when you were going towards that milestone of, going to the Olympics and getting a medal for the country and for the society that who has supported you for such
Actually,
long.
no, it wasn't for society. It was just for myself and my father.
Awesome, but I
Yeah.
would say that for the country as
Yeah.
well. You would have won. We would have been very proud of it. And so, in that moment, there was an instance with you, an accident, an injury that derailed your whole journey,
Yeah.
and you sort of reinvented yourself.
Yeah.
Usually, with athletes and with sports people, when people get derailed, it's very traumatic.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for them to come out of that shell and to understand that that's not gonna be the life which they can pursue anymore. But you sort of came out of it stronger.
Yeah.
And you sort of tried to reinvent yourself. Like, you became a coach, you became an author, you even started Fit Girl,
Project Fit Girl. Yeah.
So I don't want to focus on the trauma, but I would really want to know that when you got out of it, what made you reinvent yourself? Because usually after a trauma or after an accident, people want to do the small things or simpler things, like
Yeah.
get a job.
Exactly.
Like, the simplest thing
Which
could
is
have
an
been,
option I had.
yeah, get a job.
Yeah.
But you didn't go ahead and get a job. You started training again.
Yeah.
And you started coaching people, and you books and all. Okay, that comes with
Yes.
with
experience
maturity
and
and
life.
experience.
Yeah.
But what made you shift that? Okay, now I'm not gonna get a job, but I'm gonna train people.
Well, I was always very clear that I was not going to work in these four walls. I think I've always been very clear with that goal, even though my parents wanted to get me a job or wanted me to work at the British consulate at one point of time because it was a cool Parsi thing to do.
Yeah.
But after the accident, or even during the phase of when I was, on bed rest from the accident, because I had so many scars and bruises actually, which we were treating through Ayurveda. In those moments also, there were times where I don't think I ever doubted the fact that I wanted to continue that goal or pursue that goal of being an Olympian, because we had come very far into the journey and I was doing pretty well. It was unfortunate that post the accident, I didn't have the right kind of rehab, which then kind of caused my journey to go downhill for a few years till I moved to Australia. But there was never a doubt in my head that I wanted to quit or I didn't want to pursue this, even though there were enough doctors who told me that this is something you live with for the rest of your life because of the impact it's had on your hip and you may not be able to run again. And I was just like, in very straight words, go to hell. Like, there is no human in this world that can tell me what I am capable of doing, because this is my journey. This is my sport for now. I own this sport the way I would own my life, and I was going to give 1000% of my effort to wanting to become an Olympian. So there was no way that I was ever going to look back. Accident ho gaya, trauma ho gaya. But of course, the physical trauma was something I didn't know how to come out of, because back then there were no therapists. There were no really any physiotherapists who would help us. I only met John Gloucester when I finished college and came into the working space at Key, where he looked at me and he looked at the physical, he did treatments on me and he said that, oh, your hips are not aligned. And maybe that's what's really impinging the nerve. But for 2-3 years, I had no idea that was going on, So we had already started seeing the downhill because of the pain that had started. and it obviously pain aggravates and it leads to poor training, poor performance, etc. But the day I met John is when I started getting more and more intrigued into how our bodies into how our body works, what are the connections, how training happens when you have the right kind of strength training. He made me understand all those things, and that's when he said, I think you should go to Australia and you should train under my friend Gavin Fernandez. And I was like, no, but I want to go to America because everything happens in the United States.
Yeah.
All your Michael Johnsons and your Michael Jordans and Marion Jones and all of them come out of America.
America,
So
yeah.
he said, no, I think you should go to Australia. Gavin can really be a life-changing coach. And yeah, that's where the life made a switch for me. I think my life just turned 360 and really for the best.
And when you started coaching people, now you're on the other side of the track,
Yeah.
basically.
No, I am still on the track, by the way.
No, not that. I mean, in terms of coaching, like for
Yeah.
example, if you train somebody,
Yeah.
you're not the runner.
Yeah. No,
You're
I am
telling-
actually still running with my athletes.
Oh, so you're running parallelly.
Exactly.
And do you beat them?
Yeah.
So
Many a
that-
times.
That would not.
I will never
that
be-
would not look nice.
I will never be on the other side of the track because that was my biggest learning from my coach in Australia, Gavin Fernandez. I think when I went there, I was 24 and he was possibly 47, 48 at that time, or maybe a year or two younger. And he would run with us. And actually, even Saviosa used to run with us when we were at mid-teens. Saviosa would run with us. And I cannot tell you the effect it has on you mentally as an athlete to know that the support that your coach gives you is not just from the sidelines blowing a whistle, but he is supporting you with his energy constantly while he's running with you. And for me, that is really important to give to my students because that really set the joy of running for me. Knowing that this person is not just physically supporting me, but mentally and emotionally taking me through the run, through every step. So I know now when my children run, my students run, that every 50 meters or every 40 meters or every 100 meters, how to switch the gear, because when my coaches ran with me, they taught me that. How many coaches do that in India?
Very limited.
None. Zero. You will never see a coach running with an athlete in this country because for them it is all about how much is the timing. मुझे
Yeah.
फिनिश लाइन पे खड़े रह के टाइमिंग लेना है, मुझे उसको देखना है कि उसका स्टार्ट कैसा है. अरे लेकिन कोई दिमाग की बात ही नहीं कर रहा है. You are not thinking about how your athlete runs from the mind. You're so focused on how your athlete runs in this physical body. For me, athlete runs from the mind. The minute your mind is cleared, your body will fly. Half your battle is won over there. But if you cannot train the brain at a young age of how to run well, how to pursue every step of that run, or how to push your body in that last 50 meters, not just saying pump your arms, because that's the worst cue you give any child, but how to mentally relax your breath, your mind, your eyes, your face, your lips. That's what I learned from my coaches. And that's what I should give back as a coach to my young children or to even my adult athletes, because that's what sport is about, right? It's about growing with the journey. It's not just about kitna timing kiya, oh kya time bhage. Nobody's ever asking questions like, did you have fun? Did you enjoy
Did
it?
you have fun? Yeah.
You know?
The best question.
Exactly. Did you have fun while you were in? What did you learn while you were running? Right? Everyone's just obsessed with timings. God, it drives me insane. I think that's why people don't like me.
So then there is another side to being in athletics. Like you get those brand endorsement. At one point of time, I think you were the India ambassador for Adidas.
I still am, by the way.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So you still are the ambassador for Adidas. So how do you pick these brands? Because once you have made it, like many brands would come to you. Now brands also speak about your personality. So how do you pick the brands out? Because I think this is very important for the younger athletes to understand कि
Yeah.
किसी के साथ भी associate करना might be harmful as well.
Yeah.
Like Adidas and Kanye West का जो collaboration था.
Oh no, that's irrelevant to what we're doing. That's very irrelevant. But I think for me in my career, there was absolutely no brand endorsement or brand approach when I was actually a professional athlete. My endorsement and association with Adidas started in 2016 when I was almost ready to quit running. It was kind of going downhill after I had come back from Australia. I was not able to cope without my coach. It was really tough for me to train without Gavin. So there were a couple of things that were going on, but actually Adidas knocked on my doors when I felt like I was done with track and field. But you see how like life brings everything together. Adidas is a brand I wanted to be associated with. In fact, even Nike was a brand I wanted to be associated with when I was very young. But once I signed Adidas, I realized I was a through and through Adidas girl. There was just nothing about me that was not Adidas. There was something about that brand that made you believe that impossible was nothing. That was their brand
Hmm.
tagline at that time. And I believed in that because I lived that moment, that journey every single day, you know. So, no, my associations with any of the brands, even after Adidas, I did sign with Puma and with Under Armour,
Hmm.
but not once was any brand association a bad experience or no, I think I've had wonderful associations. I am back with Adidas now,
Hmm.
but my associations with brands have been like amazing.
And then you
They
started
respect athletes. They respect athletes. Now,
Definitely,
as times
yes.
have grown,
Yeah.
that's what I really appreciate, that, they have this very positive approach towards athletes and kind of uplifting them or supporting them, even if that just means gear or giving them some sort of
Hmm.
visibility. I think brands are doing a really good job.
And when you started Project Fit Girl, I mean, take us through that. Why did you feel the need to start it? Because you were already doing great on the track, but you still went ahead and started Project Fit Girl. Take me through that,
There
please.
had to be a way of giving back
Hmm.
to society, right? Because I just believe that there is only this much money you can earn and there is only this much fame you can get. But what beyond that? What makes you satisfied at the end of the day is knowing that what gave you this success is something that you can give to somebody else and they can make success out of it, right? So Project Fit Girl was that way of giving back to a society that did not have the kind of availability to this sport. While running is very easy for everyone and every single person can run, there is not one person in this world who cannot run. But to be able to give the right guidance on running, which probably I got and didn't get as a young athlete, all my experiences of training in different countries. I trained in 4 countries. I've lived in 4 continents. Every country got its own experience with it. Africa had something to teach me. Germany had something to teach me. Australia had something to teach me. Back then, I had also trained in London, so England had something to teach me. So, from all the various coaches that I had picked up, I learned different things and I took all the positives from it. But also I want children to have their struggles. I want them to have their own journey of making sure that they also fall and learn from that. So Project Fit Girl is just a really simple sports education program. There's nothing fancy there. We work with children either in government schools or with children in villages. How do I find these places? A lot of people ask me that. I don't know. It has found me, and that's all I'm really grateful for, because it's I don't know how far it will go or how long I will continue it or what heights we will go to with Project Fit Girl, but it will surely be enough. The program will reach children where it needs to reach,
Yeah, no doubt
and
about
it
it.
could be 100 children or 1,000 children. It doesn't matter. But what matters is that we touch lives of those children who will benefit from playing sport and make it a life skill and a lifestyle rather than just playing it at school or college level.
And through your journey, I believe, like as an athlete, there is one particular word that attaches to any professional athlete, that is discipline.
Yeah.
And in today's day and age, like even with me, it's very difficult to keep the discipline going day in and day out. So how do you muster that kind of willpower, that discipline is required no matter what, no matter whether you have fallen, no matter how you're doing, no matter if you're doing the next thing.
Yeah.
So how did you make sure that throughout your journey you could stick to that disciplinary factor?
My father made sure of that, not me.
So
I
like a
think,
support system,
yeah, yeah.
basically.
If it wasn't for my dad, I think I would be nowhere today. It was he was so disciplined. God, there cannot be someone that disciplined in this life. Like we see our parents, right?
Hmm.
They have a certain routine of their life. They wake up at a certain time, they go for their walks, they eat at a certain time, they go to work. Their work is also super disciplined. They come back from work also at a disciplined time. शाम का रूटीन कुछ होता है. So that discipline, that they've probably also seen it uh, um, from their parents or grandparents. So with my father, that discipline was very strict because probably he also saw it from my grandfather. But because also he knew that the goal that we had set out to was not an easy goal.
And
You
without
know,
discipline, it
yeah,
would be,
exactly.
yeah.
Without discipline, you cannot get anywhere in life. Generally, in life, it's not just sports, but sports makes you even more disciplined because it requires a certain amount of commitment and consistency from you, which again, I think any other profession requires. But there is something about sport, you can't take that away, you know.
So there's one question that I wanted to ask now, that to all the businessmen who come on my podcast, I always ask them that what is your morning ritual and what is your winding down ritual. So morning ritual, I can understand that
Yeah.
it's for you. It would be
It
training.
was different. Actually, no, I never had training as a morning ritual. I always went to school, college, and even when I lived in Australia, a morning ritual was very different. We had to go to the clinic, we would study for some time, and when the coach had time from his work, he would probably say, "Oh, let's go run now. Are you free? Let's go run now. Are you free? Let's go run now." So we could run any time of the day. So we never really had a ritual, but we had our life ritual. This was a life ritual. It was a lifestyle for us. There was just no day that you would wake up and think that today you are not going to do this. Every day you woke up and you knew that you were going to do training. It was going
And
to
how
be
about
track
winding
training.
down?
Huh?
Like after a long day,
Lots of
for
TV and
example,
chocolates. Lots of TV and
I thought
chocolates.
बहुत हो गया, I'm just
No
gonna
way.
crash.
Yeah, you will crash eventually because you had so much sugar. But no, we've had different routines in different countries. I mean, most places I've also lived alone. So yeah, it usually winds down with watching television or something. Now that we have
Just
Netflix
calm
and
down,
all,
yeah.
yeah, back in the day it was just television that we would watch. But or communicating with the family or conversations. With Gavin, it was really different. We would watch very intelligent things at the end of the day, in the night. It could be funny things also, but things that made you think, things that would make you have a conversation, things that would make you realize that how you can really apply sports to life. Because at the end, that's what life is about, right? Life is a culmination of both.
During our conversation, we were actually, you brushed on how the impact of social media is on people. So now, if I have to ask you, like as a professional coach and as a professional athlete, if anybody is looking to learn how to run, what are the key things that they should be looking into social media to learn, and what are the key things that they need a professional guiding them on ground, and
Yeah.
that cannot be done through social media?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question because in today's day and time, people are using social media as a mixed platform. I would say it's got its pros and it's got its cons, but to get the right kind of information, especially if you are an absolute beginner, I would say go to a coach. What a coach brings to the table, nothing on the media can teach you that, right? Because if your base itself is weak, what is the point of doing all that fancy, trendy stuff if you cannot actually have a strong base to your pyramid? That pyramid base has to be super strong for you to be able to do anything further than that. The availability of information and the kind of content that is generated today on social media is way too much for an amateur to consume, right? It's also not super relevant for everything that they do. Yes, certain things are important, drills are important, core is important, strength is important, learning to have the right technique is important. But if you find the right coach, I personally would rather go to a coach, which I did. And I'm really glad I come from a time where social media was not so influential on me. Today, yes, lots of people are influenced by that. I would say a coach holds a lot more stronger values, brings experience to the table, and also brings a certain awareness of observation, certain awareness of, observation really, because the more you see, the more you can change, the more you can tweak, the more you can improve. And I do have a lot of thoughts on how social media influencers are becoming running coaches. It's really unfortunate, but it's trendy these days, and unfortunately, trends don't last. Real
Very
talk,
often, yeah.
real talk lasts. So let's see how long these trends can go on, and how long these running influencers can hold on to becoming real coaches.
Awesome. So now, just the fun bit of the podcast. I'm just gonna ask you some quick fire questions,
Okay.
which you can answer at your
Yeah.
level. And so, tell me one book that changed your life.
One book that changed my life was Abhinav Bindra's book. I think, oh my god, if he sees this and I don't know the name of this book, it's going to be horrible. I think it says a shot at history. I think that's the one, a shot at history.
Okay. Your favorite athlete growing up?
Always Kathy Freeman. She's an Australian 400 meter
One thing
sprinter.
which is a complete non-athletic thing that you do in the day.
Eat a lot of sugar.
Actually, that's shocking. Like,
But our body craves it, right? Because the
because
amount of training
everybody
you
talks
do.
about no sugar, sugar se dur raho, and you are like, eat a lot of sugar. Still, I'll run, I'll beat
Don't
you.
listen to me, please.
only for this thing. But yeah, I can actually understand the ferocity that you talk with.
Yeah.
I can believe that. So I'm not a girl, so I'm not a part of Project Fit Girl, but I believe that you're an excellent coach
Thank you.
in that terms,
Thank you.
apart from the sugar. If athletics was not the field you were in, what would be the next dream?
I would be a dancer for sure.
Dancer.
Yeah.
Down the line, after 10 years, where do you see yourself?
I see myself opening a school for young girls in rural India, or an athletic school for young girls.
If instead of Project Fit Girl, if you wanted to do it with the boys, what would you name it?
It'd still be Project Fit Girl. Fit Girl's just my brand name, that's all. I was not so creative when I created this name.
Okay. One advice that your dad gave you, which stayed with you for the longest and still stays with you.
Just run fast. Don't look left or right. Just run fast.
Okay. If there's one advice you would give today's kids, just one quick advice. If they want to start running, what would that be?
Don't get influenced by social media or any form of media. No YouTube, no internet. Just listen to your heart, listen to your coaches, listen to your parents.
One key takeaway from your journey so far.
Fall till you succeed.
Okay. One thing that always helps you to overcome any sort of setback.
Breathing and meditation.
Okay. How can one start breathing and meditation as a beginner?
As a beginner, join a yoga class, please. Don't try it by yourself because most people don't know how to breathe correctly.
Yeah, because
Breathing is simple.
yeah.
Breathing is simple, but pranayam breathing is very beautiful, and if done correctly, it can actually do wonders to your sport and just general life as well.
And if you have a very bad day at training, what is that one thing that lifts you up?
Sugar.
Okay. I mean, we can probably cut off this one.
No, this should be part of the podcast. People will love it.
Got it. So thank you so much, Aisha, for sharing all this brilliant stuff with us. One thing which I really loved listening to is the kind of ferocity that you bring towards your field, your athletics, your running, and towards winning. Like it's been a while when I have spoken with somebody who just says, "I am here to do my shit. I
Yeah.
don't give a damn, man. I'm gonna win. See you on the other side." And I believe that is going to be one of my key takeaways, that whenever I work on my goal, I mean, I want to have that attitude that I'm just doing my shit and I don't care what happens. I'm going to get to that finish line and I'm going to be doing it as the first person there. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for doing the Project Fit Girl for the women in India to make sure that they are empowered and they have a way. If you cannot find a purpose, running can be one of them.
Absolutely right.
I
And
think
running is the best and most beautiful gift
And
you can
this
give
is something
anyone.
that you actually know, because the kids are running all the time.
Yeah,
So I think that is somewhere you can just create it into a profession,
yeah.
and you are a standing example of how it can be done and how it can be done beautifully with all the setbacks and all the traumas and all the good things and the bad things and the support things, and especially as a woman, like, because in India usually sports are more focused towards men, cricket and all those things, like back in the day when you started off. So thank you so much for telling us about all these great things that you have been doing,
Thank you.
and thank you so much for getting time out to do this with us.
I loved being here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Stay tuned for more.